Hi everyone, I'm Richard. Today I'll present on Yamantaka, a demon in Tibetan Buddhism. Yamantaka, which denotes the destroyer of death in Sanskrit, always appears as a furious demon among modern Buddhist artworks. However, many visual elements of Yamantaka that we deem as typical today, from its demonic fangs and horns to the garland of human skulls, were not present at early Mahayana dominant Buddhism, embodying a different set of doctrines from Mahayana. The wave of esoteric Buddhism starting in the late 7th to the early 8th centuries AD take part in shaping the depiction and interpretation of Yamantaka in the following millennium. Through comparing and analyzing the artistic depictions of Yamantaka across eras, this article argues that first constructed as the secondary follower of Buddha, Yamantaka gains a more independent identity as Buddha's manifestation as the influence of esoteric Buddhism expands. At the same time, Yamantaka embodies more demonized and wistful features and illuminates esoteric Buddhist different interpretation of compassion. In the 8th century, while esoteric Buddhism is still in the making, the artist portrayed Yamantaka as inferior to its Buddha counterpart and less potent in fulfilling its Buddhist missions. As one of the earliest representations of Yamantaka, Figure 1 demonstrates a stark contrast in its composition. While Manjushri, the Buddha of wisdom, occupies the center of the sculpture, Yamantaka only appears by the side of Manjushri's right leg, almost 2/3 shorter in height than its counterpart. By fixing the viewer's attention on Manjushri, the artist overshadows Yamantaka as secondary to the Buddha. Besides, Manjushri hangs its right arm and holds its fingers straight and close, pointing to Yamantaka's head. This gesture reinforces the message that Yamantaka is under the Buddha's dispatch. The artist also delivers a different level of detail to the image of Yamantaka and Manjushri, ornamented with chains and a necklace consisting of large amount of tiny rounded projections. The Manjushri shows its exalted status and arouses the respect of its worshippers. Using contoured lines, the artist creates shadows on both sides of Manjushri's upper body, adding to the three-dimensional effects. Its lips close to form a vivid line that render the smile mystical. In contrast, the snake that ties around Yamantaka's waist and the lotus it holds are carved so indistinctly that they are hardly recognized. Unlike the curvy stature of Manjushri, the outline of Yamantaka's upper body is shallow and lacks change, making it less noticeable for the viewer. The visual marginalization of Yamantaka reveals its relatively less important missions at this time. Manjushri's gesture of pointing at Yamantaka's head delegates it as a messenger. Distinguished for its rapidity, Yamantaka travels around the universe to spread Buddhist ideals and gather more worshippers. Blossoming above mud without losing its pureness, the lotus flower held by Yamantaka helps it accomplish the task of warding off the external threats, protecting its practitioners, and finally purifying the Buddhist universe. Yamantaka's enemies at this time are primarily wicked beings and behavior, from evil demons to beautiful people. However, it hasn't carried out the mission of eliminating people's spiritual obstacles towards enlightenment. In this early image of Yamantaka, race, violence, and domination are not the central themes. Although the artist reveals a slight annoyance of Yamantaka through his furrowed eyebrows, the violent emotion is downplayed by his faint smile, making the facial expression ambiguous. Although Yamantaka's extra arms looks demonic, its two hands on the lower side are not designed with significant functions. These techniques hide the aggression and keep the human features in the early depiction of Yamantaka. While esoteric Buddhism hasn't gained significant influence, the artist's choice reflects interpretation of compassion in Mahayana Buddhism. Although with a few exceptions, the Mahayana followers uphold universalizing compassion and kindness, which they believe are critical for enlightenment. Driven by this worldview, they advocate extending moral benevolence indiscriminately to all contexts. Thus, no matter for what purposes, violence and hostility are seen as transgression. Such Buddhist philosophy could justify the artist's decision to shape a non-violent Buddhist role model. 2 centuries after esoteric Buddhist formation, the practitioners bring its doctrines and images of demons and deities across Himalayan ranges to Tibet. This powerful belief system substantially shapes the mainstream Buddhist practices in China and the role of Yamantaka. Figure 2 shows a sculpture of Yamantaka commissioned by the Chinese Emperor Qianlong in the 18th century. At this time, Yamantaka has gained independence from the Buddha Manjushri and becomes the center of focus in the sculpture. Accompanying the visual prominence, Yamantaka also earns a higher status. No longer secondary to Manjushri, Yamantaka becomes the graceful incarnation of it instead. With an autonomous identity, Yamantaka can individually fulfill Manjushri's mission of enlightenment with his wisdom. And the sculpture incorporates elements to shed light on Yamantaka's more significant responsibilities. Each holding a unique instrument, the neatly arranged arms demonstrate Yamantaka's versatility in performing broader tasks. Many human sculpts form garlands that decorate Yamataka's shoulder and dangle in front of his crotch. They symbolize the internal obstacles that Yamataka has conquered, such as greed, envy, and lust. These negative and distracting thoughts reduce humans to ignorance, which connects with death in Buddhism. By inspiring humans to detach from ignorance with his wisdom, Yamantaka triumphs over death and starts rebirth. Thus, at this time, Yamantaka's enemies are no longer the external threats as interpreted by Mahayana Buddhism, but the spiritual impediments that trap humans from enlightenment. In addition, rather than equivocating Yamantaka's emotions like its early construction, the artist of the 18th century sculptor exposes its outflowing wrist to the fullest. The wide eyes outlined with deep curves glower at the viewers. By hollowing out Yamataka's smiles to create a deep and dark space, the artist adds to the established dimensionality and creates the momentum of furious howl. To magnify Yamataka's strained facial muscles and further boost its indignation, the artist adds paralleled and contoured lines on Yamataka's jaw and nose bridge. While early Yamataka has only 4 arms with underplate functions, the modern artist aligns 20 arms symmetrically around Yamataka's body. The arms make the space compacted, and thus all the viewers with the sense of pressure. By delivering an exaggerating gaping jaw, an animal-like nose, and protruding horns and fangs, the artist demonizes the 18th century Yamantaka much more than its earlier construction. Besides the demon itself, the artist skillfully manipulates the other elements around Yamantaka to set off its violence and fury. With vivid lights and distinct contrast of color, the artist intensifies the rapid motion of the burning flames above Yamantaka's head. By visualizing furious emotion into the concrete object, the sculptor builds a symbolic connection that overwhelms the viewer with fear and respect. Trampled by Yamantaka, the water buffaloes raise their heads and open their mouths, roaring to show their pain and struggle. This posture indicates that the power of Yamantaka subjugates their ferocity and untamed nature. The unconstrained aggression and rage of this Yamantaka sculpture reveal a different understanding of compassion in esoteric Buddhism. Esotericism revolutionizes the ideal of universal compassion and proposes that Buddhists have transcended the regulation of moral standards. Therefore, violence and subjugation are justifiable as long as the ultimate purpose sticks to compassion. While the animals and humans trampled by Yamantaka are in torture, they empower Yamantaka to fly and travel underground, elevating its ability to fulfill Buddhist missions and extend compassion. Thus, by advancing a different interpretation of mercy, the esoteric Buddhists embrace a more demonic and ferocious representation of Yamantaka. Overall, this article concludes that while Yamantaka was originally conceived as secondary companion of Buddha, as the prominence of esoteric Buddhism grows, Yamantaka assumes a more autonomous status as a manifestation of Buddha. Yamantaka, on the other hand, exhibits more demonized and graceful characteristics, illuminating esoteric Buddhist different perspectives on compassion. So that's all for my presentation. And here is the images that I included in the slides. And here are my references. So thank you so much. And now it's time for your questions and comments. And after I watch today's recording, I'll respond to them one by one in the Canvas discussion post. So thank you so much.